And we're live. So I'm going to take this opportunity to let you guys get into the chat. I'm going to pull up the chat. Maybe I should do that in a separate window so that I can actually see what you guys are saying, unlike most of the times that I've done this where I just forget about it for a while. And we will be taking some questions here. I'll be taking questions. It's not a committee thing. And I'll be looking at some of my Patreon members' teams. If you have any teams that you want to, have me grade or just look at and give you my thoughts on, you can just, copy and paste the players into the chat or something. Or if you're following me on Instagram, you can send me a couple pictures on there. I do have that open, and I can potentially do that as well. I'll open that up and try to do a couple of your teams. I don't want to make this go too long. We're looking at hopefully 30 minutes max. If it goes a little bit longer, that's fine, but I don't like to drag these things on. I've done over an hour live streams, and by the end of it, there's 10 people just asking me questions, and it's like, okay, you can ask me questions on your own time. We don't need everybody watching this, so hopefully this will be informative for everybody. And one of the things that I wanted to start off with is, as I'm loading the chat, it might start double playing in the background here. One of the things that I've noticed as I've done 2 drafts already, so I had the Creators League draft on Saturday night, and then on Sunday we had the Data Draft League draft. And the 2 things that I've noticed are that right wingers are incredibly scarce, and you really kind of have to build your entire team around right wingers and where they're going. And so I'll walk you through the thought process of how I've handled that, or how I'm hoping to handle that in my 2 upcoming drafts. But right off the bat, let's just look at some of the ADPs here. So I don't know if I can, does this have, yeah, it has the positional. I hope it brings in multi-positional players, but essentially, if you're not going to get a right winger in the first round, so you're looking at Pastrnak, we're looking at these ADPs all the way on the far right. This is the diamond level. I pay for Yahoo Premium for some stupid reason, but it was a little bit helpful last year, so I kept it up again this year. But this is for diamond members, so the higher level fantasy players, where they're going in those ADPs. So Pasternak's still going around 4, Tkachuk going 5.5, Kucherov 8.5, Rantanen 8.9, which is a little bit surprising because I think of him as a 6 or 7. So you have to get one of these guys in the first round, and the only way you're going to do that is if you're drafting between picks, I'd say 3 or 4 and 8 or 9, because after that, then you're looking at Jack Hughes, Tage Thompson, Pettersson, some of those other guys, and the wingers kind of dissipate for another 5 or 10 picks. So if you don't get Pasta, Tkachuk, Kucherov, Rantanen, then the next guy you're looking at is Marner at 17. And then you're looking at Nylander at 25. I would imagine, so Timo Meier has jumped up in the last 7 days. Now he's at 36. I would imagine in some league formats he goes a little bit earlier than that as well. So, and JT Miller is another guy who I would imagine goes a little bit higher, especially because he's extremely complete and he's dual eligible. Same with Meier. Both really complete, both dual eligible. So the sweet spot is you're getting one right winger either in the first round, or if you're not picking between 3 and 9, you have to plan to get that right winger probably in the second or third round, and you're targeting one of those guys that I just mentioned: Marner, Nylander, maybe Hyman, Meier, and then JT Miller. And then the next tier after that are guys like Boldy, who's going in the 50s, 53 right here. You got Mark Stone at 68, Keller at 62, Bratt 69. So like in the 50 to 70, 80 range, there's a couple of guys who are, I would classify them as the next tier down, where they're point per game players, but they're not goal scoring, shot volume, point per game guys in every scenario. Keller's more of an offensive guy, but he's a little bit assist heavy. Mark Stone, there's injury risk there. So some of these guys have something else going on that's limiting their ADP and keeping them in that range. But you really do have to plan for this. So you have to kind of structure your draft around the right wingers and the D. And I mentioned that in the strategy video. It's just sort of, it's been like on turbo drive after I've done these 2 drafts. The D and the right wingers dried up really quick. Now you can find some deep value plays, but you don't want to structure your whole team around a weakness point of your right wingers. So hopefully this was a little bit informative. Now that I've got some people in the chat, we'll take a look at some stuff here. Martin says, how do you feel about Panarin and Barkov? Only points, 90 each. For Panarin, I would venture a guess that most of the Rangers should have a bump in production this year because of Peter Laviolette, and Panarin knows that he's been disappointing in the playoffs, so I would imagine he's motivated. And even when he's not motivated, he's probably a 90-point player. So I would imagine Panarin could break 100 this year. It's just sort of like a hunch. I don't know how I feel about him without the long hair, though. It looks kind of weird. As for Barkov, he was a 1.15 point per game player last year. And I'll try to bring up his hub here just to give you a sense of what you're looking at. If this is new to you, this is how I kind of filter through information and figure out what these players are, because it's hard to tell. Sometimes you're like, oh yeah, this player's great, but like, what are they great at? So for example, see if I can find this here, Barkov. So yeah, 1.15 points per game, assist heavy. He does score some goals, but a little bit, obviously 99th percentile in assists is great. 3 shots per game is really good as well, and really good power play production. So yeah, I mean, I could see him hitting 90. Panarin, I could easily see hitting 90. It's just they're not goal scorers, so you're going to fade them a little bit. I got Panarin in the 5th round in the Creators League draft, and I was extremely happy about that. So to get a 90, 100-point left winger in that range is kind of crazy. Yeah, a face. This is maybe the first time some of you have seen my face. I've done podcasting with the Boys in the Booth podcast where I've shown my face, but yeah. And then my wife made up this nice little sticker thing that I put on my shirt. This is what I would like if I could get a shirt made up. It would look like this kind of black shirt with a nice little logo there. JT Miller, Tage Thompson, Scheifele, Kane, Forsberg, Caulfield, Pasta, Tuck, DeBrusk, Raymond, Kopitar, Bouchard, Carlson, Letang, Klingberg, Vanacek, Schmid, Johansson. That sounds like a very shallow league, like a 10-teamer, but it's definitely stacked. The D looks strong. Bouchard, Carlson, Letang, all very good. Klingberg, you know what you're getting, power play points and assists. Vanacek and Schmid, I like that. Johansson is maybe obviously the question mark there. And I do wonder, the thing that I was wondering about the Devils is their defense going to hold up the way that it did the last 2 years? So 2 years ago, they had the defense. They didn't have the goaltending. Last year, they had both, and they were extremely good. But they made a couple changes in the offseason. They lose Ryan Graves. They lose Severson. And now they're bringing in kids, very good kids, top 4 picks in Luke Hughes and Simone Nemec. And they both look really good in preseason, but it's just a matter of how good defensively are they going to be. So out of that, I would say if this is a 10-team league, you're probably A-. Goaltending could be a tad bit stronger, but wingers are very strong. Miller's dual eligible. Thompson and Scheifele are great centers. You got Kane there, Forsberg, Caulfield, Pasta, Tuck. So some of the best right wingers, some depth. I mean, you got a little bit of everything there. I'm going to have to try to move through these a little bit quicker because there's a ton of action right now. So best center option out of these 3 for Matthew. Josh Norris, Ryan Hartman, Pavel Zacha. I'm preferable to Josh Norris, and this isn't going to reflect it. Yeah, it's not really. See if I can pull up his hub from 21-22, which is going to look different. It wasn't as built out. I kind of did this as an exercise just to get a glimpse into the previous season's data. But Josh Norris was a huge goal scorer, and if he's anything close to what he was back then, he's going to be a 35 goal scorer centerman that you can pick up in the 200 ADP range. So yeah, 98th percentile in goals, over a half a goal per game, relatively close to a point per game. Very power play heavy, which is the question mark, I guess, now that they got so much talent. But 1.2 hits per game is really nice. Now he's coming off shoulder surgery, I believe, so that's going to be a little bit interesting to see if he still hits. But this is what we prefer normally in fantasy, is if they're goal heavy and the assists aren't really there, because you can find assists anywhere. But yeah, I would say Norris out of those guys. Hartman is line assignment dependent, so if he's not playing with the 2 guys in Minnesota, Zuccarello and Kaprizov, then he's not that valuable. And even if he is, he may not be that valuable. And Zaka is kind of a wild card. He was not necessarily the best last year, but he's obviously getting a better role this year. So I can see the narrative, but of those three, I would go with Norris. Peter says, I have the choice to keep two of these players. Matthews, Stützle, Ottinger, Heiskanen, Bouchard, Boldy, and a bunch of other guys. And I mean, it's tough. There's so much talent there. With goals being what they are, with goaltending, I mean, you do have one of the 3 or 4 goaltenders that seems to be pretty good every single season. Now, it's a small sample size for Ottinger, but I think you can punt goaltending because there will always be goaltenders that come out of nowhere and play really well. So I would, right off the bat, I'm thinking Matthews and Stützle just because of the fact that Matthews is a potential 60-goal guy and Stützle is incredibly complete and dual eligible. It may be hard to pass up on Bouchard. It's hard to know about Bouchard without him playing a full season on that power play. If you have this choice next year and you see what Bouchard does and he's over a point per game on defense because of that power play, that would kind of change things. But right now I'm leaning Matthews and Stützle, but I love Caulfield at that range. I do like Matheson in general. Scheifele's a good value play there, but I think those two guys at the top. So I'm going to switch gears really quick and go do some Discord teams because these guys are the lifeblood that keep me going. So I have to make sure I'm attending to their needs as well. So let's take a look at this team if I can zoom in just a bit. This is Spence's team. So this is apparently goaltending heavy and I think face-off heavy. Mikko Rantanen with a good right winger coverage first pick. Sorokin at number 2, maybe a little bit early for my taste, but because it's a goaltending heavy league, that's why he did that. Miller, really nice play there. Yossi at 4th round is an excellent value play, 35. DeBrincat, dual eligible, could be a 40-goal guy again, was in the past. I like that. Tavares in the 5th round is really good value. Sergachev in the 6th is good value. Gustafsson, that's an excellent pickup. The only question mark is if he's going to be the 1 or the 1A, 1B, or, is he going to take the net and run with it? Because if he's the starter, that's incredible value for a guy who put up a .930 save percentage last year. Jari in the 8th might be a little bit of a stretch, just given the fact that you probably could have waited on him a little bit longer. Skinner in the 9th is nice value. Forsberg in the 10th is good value. Scheifele, I like that. And then we come over, I might have to resume this. Then we got Suzuki, Letang, Thompson, Dobson, Kadri, Zuccarello, Matheson, Klingberg. So I like a lot of these. I don't know what to make of Nick Suzuki. He played all 82 games last year. There's only 2 players on Montreal that played all 82 games last year, and he's one of them, and he's the only one that actually played for Montreal for those 82 games. So point ceiling not high enough for my taste. I'd like him to be a point per game guy, and he can get there, I think. They were just decimated with injuries, and he had to do a lot of the heavy lifting himself. Goal production's pretty good. 88th percentile, 87th in assists, about a half an assist per game. Power play production's good, but nothing exceptional here, nothing over 90th percentile, which is why I guess he's been dropped in the ADP range down to, 115. So that makes a little bit of sense. Matheson in the 19th round is huge value for a guy who's kind of done it a lot. If you don't understand why I'm high on Matheson or why a lot of these YouTubers are high on Matheson, I think Fantasy Puck is high on him too. Look at this trajectory. So obviously every year getting an increase in his rating. Now this is the player hub, so this is a completeness rating. This is not the weighted rating, but going up every year and a healthy jump from year to year, 21, 22, 22, 23. And he covers a little bit of everything. So you're getting 92nd percentile blocks. You're getting a hit per game. Power play production will probably be better this year now that they've got a full healthy season. Remember, Caulfield was out by the time Matheson came back, so they never played together on the power play. That could increase his production on the power play. The shot volume is pretty good. You'd like it a little bit higher, but again, as they get healthier, maybe he takes a couple more shots. The assists are really good despite the fact that they weren't healthy. The point per game is not bad. You'd like to see it a little bit higher, but at the same time, look at where he's going. He went here at 155. No, that's 186. So really great value there. I like the team overall. The goaltending should definitely do it for you. I would like it a little bit better if you had the tandem, Thompson and Hill. But you got excellent goaltending. You got Sorokin, Gustafsson, Jari, and Thompson. All of them should get you really good stats, and Jari should get you some volume. Same with Sorokin. So I'd give an A-, maybe a B+, just because of the fact that you reached a little bit on Jari, but I think there's too much talent here to give a B+, so it's probably going to be an A- for me. Zoom out a little bit, and we'll look at Ham's team. And then after this, I will start going back to the chat and answering some more questions. So we started off, this is not by draft position, so we're just looking at the team as a whole here. Miller, Malkin, Draisaitl, McCann. I like those left wingers a lot. And obviously dual eligible for Miller and Draisaitl, so good flexibility there. Nylander on the right, Toffoli on the right, so that's already better than my right wingers in the Creators League. Hedman, Pietrangelo, Nurse, Gudis, and McNabb and Klingberg. So the defense is the weak spot here. I like all of these defensemen as 2-3s, but you don't really have a number one. And if Hedman gets that power play back, he could be that guy. And Pietrangelo is an underrated guy who does quarterback the power play and gets a bunch of blocks. And a lot of these guys get blocks. So Nurse is a hits blocks guy with some shot volume as well. You get blocks and a couple of shots out of Hedman. McNabb is a hits blocks guy. So you're covering that with the D, which is the good play to make if you didn't get that number one D. So it looks like he missed on that first, that elite upper echelon D. And he kind of had to scramble and come up with another strategy and came up with, targeting hits and blocks out of his D. Then Evander Kane here in the utility spot. He's also a left winger, so the left wing is extremely strong, and Kuzmenko there as well. So absolutely loaded on left wing, and you could maybe parlay that into a trade offer when you have a position of strength like that. And if you got guys on the bench that are putting up points and you just need, got to get some guys in the lineup, you can trade those guys, shuffle the deck a little bit. Duchesne, I'm not crazy about, but at this point, and he's dual eligible, he's probably a really deep pick. I do like Schmaltz, and then Pacioretty as an IR stash is pretty good as well. So overall, I would give the team probably a B+, mainly because of the defense. I didn't check the goaltending. I don't know if he posted the goaltending here, or if I didn't see it. So yeah, I can't give a complete grade on that, but the goals are going to be coming in droves out of the left wing position, and definitely some positional flexibility there is going to help out a lot. So now I'll jump back to the chat. As we take another look at the player hub, I'll look up some guys as you're asking me some questions here. So I'm scrolling down, and I'm trying to catch up where I left off. So if you're commenting right now, just give me a minute. What about Fiala? Do we fade and send trade offers on the second half, or is he a full season player now? That's a great question, because up until last year, he was a second half player, and I did a whole video on that, and I'm sure you watched that because you're asking the question. Last year, he was a full season player, and maybe that has to do with LA. So, yeah, he was basically a 1.15 point per game player in the second half, and he wasn't really putting that up in the first half prior to last year. But let's pull him up now, and I think he's a 1.1 point per game guy. 1.04, not that far off. And then, pretty assist heavy, but he's getting 3 shots per game, and he's getting the power play production. So, you're getting that access to LA's top 9. Basically, anybody in their top 9 is ownable. Kaliev would be a nice deep play there because he's getting some time. Byfield would be another deep play because he's apparently on the top line with Kempe and Kopitar. But Fiala is kind of a guy who can drive his own line, and I think they're going to put him with Dubois. I don't know about that, but he's definitely, I think he's crossed over and he's become a full season player after that trade. But you know what to do if he starts sucking in the first half and you don't own him. You go out and make that trade offer. Mr. Nightmare. So we'll grade this team. So Jack Hughes, Braden Point, Robertson, Marchand, Svech, Marshall. So pretty good up front. Fiala in there as well. Kyrou, Tippett, Yossi, Morrissey, Seth Jones, And Gudis, I really like that blue line. And Seth Jones is a sneaky play this year. He's been, if you look at his stats from last year, he was a pretty good blocks guy. 1.74 blocks, 1.47 hits, and he was getting some shot volume, but obviously the offense wasn't there because, they're a terrible team. So this year, quarterbacking that power play with Bedard, that could potentially bump up his power play production, his assists, maybe some goals. And, wherever he's going is probably going to be value for you because I don't see him going in the top 100 most of the time. And then the goaltending, Ottinger, Jari, and Schmid. And I like those three options as well. Jari's the question mark for me. I had him last year and it was frustrating. But in years past, I've also had him and he was very good. So Ottinger's going to carry the team. Schmid, I think, is a really good player. I don't know about the team. I was making comments in the Discord that I think Schmid could take over the number one job. But then, it seems to be he only plays great against the Rangers or like other Metro teams. He got lit up. I guess the Islanders are a Metro team too. I think he got lit up in that game. But for whatever reason, he just absolutely shuts the door on the Rangers. So if you have him on the bench, play him against the Rangers. That's the little tip of advice. But I'd say this is a really strong team. You did cover your wing bases pretty well. Hughes and Point should get you some goal scoring. Robertson, obviously, goal scoring as well. Marchand, I think, is going to have a nice bounce back. Svech is the upside play, I would guess, because he's never really popped off yet, and he's very complete. And then Marchessault is an underrated shot volume and goal scoring right winger. I'd say an A. And the reason I'm not going higher is because you don't have that Robertson's on the left side as your top winger. And ideally, you'd like him on the right, or not Robertson, but you'd like your strength coming from the right side. But that's just kind of semantics with a strong team like this. You could do a screenshot. I don't know if you can post screenshots in the chat, so people are just listing their teams. So Thomas Lamb says McKinnon, Pedersen, Kaprizov, Reinhart, Forsberg, Fiala, Hyman, Laine, Nichushkin, Yossi, Bouchard, Chikrin, Werenski, Matheson. This has got to be like an 8-team league, maybe a 10-teamer, and it's absolutely stacked. If I had anything resembling that in a 12-team league, I would be just... I'd probably take out a line of credit for my winnings at the end of the year because it'd be pretty much money in the bank. 2-team keeper league with draft pick trades. Keep Pasternak and Rantanen. Drafted Pedersen, Stützle, and Zibanejad in the first, Yossi in the second, Svech, Kane, and Trouba in the third. That's insane. You get the two best right wingers in the game. Pedersen is one of the most complete centers. Stützle is one of the others. So if you're looking at this right now, Pedersen's right here. Stützle is right beneath him. So two of those guys. So with the hub, you have to clear out the player search in order to get their stats pulled up. But yeah, two incredibly complete centers. I'm sorry. Stützle's a center left wing. And Pedersen's a center, I believe just a single position center this year. But really, really strong team. A+. If it's an 8-team league, you're probably still going to win. But yeah, if you were starting up a keeper league this year, which only allows for teams to keep a maximum of 3 players, who would be your top ranked players for each position? I'm not going to do each position because that's like 15 players. But I would say your centers would be your McDavid, Draisaitl. It's for me, like Bedard has to be in the top 5 for centers in a keeper league, but it's hard to put him above McDavid, Draisaitl, McKinnon, Matthews, because even though he's going to be as good as McDavid, we project, he's still not necessarily going to do that this year and next year compared to Draisaitl, who's already a 1.6 point per game player. McDavid's a 1.9 point per game player. I mean, we haven't seen that in 30 years in the NHL. So can Bedard get there? Yeah, but it's not going to happen this year or next year, I don't think. I don't think he's going to come out of the gate with 160 points. So, I would still put him behind those guys. Some of the others, I mean, for D, in terms of rookies, like I don't know how much I would give. Like, Bedard's generational. So Luke Hughes is a really great player. I would definitely put him in consideration for a keeper league, but I don't know how high I'd go because, we don't know how his point ceiling is going to be with power play time. Is he going to play on the power play? He looked really good snapping it around with his brother, but are they going to use Dougie Hamilton there? I don't think we've gotten a good take on that yet. So I'll just leave it at that, and hopefully that was a little bit of enough information for you. I got to keep it moving, trying to keep this. We're already at 25 minutes. I wanted to cut it off at 30, and that's just not going to happen. Saros and Demko. Oh, that was the goalies for this previous team. So yeah, A plus. Accidentally skipped all the way to the bottom. Thoughts on Korpisalo as a B behind Saros. So for whatever reason, Korpisalo went really late in my draft. And in the Creators League draft, I forget where I got him. See if I can pull it up. I don't know if this is the right league that's going to pull up the draft results, but no, this is another league. But yeah, he was going like 150, 170 or something. And it just didn't make any sense. So if he's going in that range, he's a number one goaltender playing on Ottawa, and Ottawa's probably playoff or bust this year, so why not take a shot at that range? I mean, I would maybe, think about it in the top 100 and maybe fade him a little bit, but at that point, why not take a chance on him? So as I'm looking up my team from the Creators League draft, where did we get... tell me it was the other draft. It's just so much crap going on in my head right now. So yeah, I had the opposite. So it was the Data Draft League. Anyway, I'm not going to look it up. But yeah, Korpisalo should be a really good B behind Saros. You're going to get tons of starts out of both of those guys, and you probably don't need a third goalie at that point. In fact, let's take a quick look at the goaltending hub to look at Korpisalo just while we're talking about him. Make a nice little eyeball there with the scrolly wheels. My new favorite pastime. I don't get out much, guys. You can clearly tell. Saturday night, I'm doing a fantasy draft. So yeah, Korpisalo. He used to have a much better team expected goals against because he was obviously on LA and they're much better. So that is going to drop his rating. He was much higher rated last year before this team update. But 91st percentile in goals saved above expected, 914 save percentage, 2.9 goals against, and the starts are probably going to come up as well because he was injured for a huge chunk last year when he was in Columbus. So I would imagine the start volume comes up, the wins might come up to the 30 range, and then you're still probably looking at a 915, and I don't know how much the shutouts are going to be there with their defense, but he should still definitely be a number one option. So who would I take, Matt Tkachuk or Pastrnak? So let's look at this with the player hub. Actually, let's look at the weighted rating dashboard, and I'll show you how to compare players on this. So if you're a Patreon member, if you have access to this, there's an interesting way that you can compare players using these dashboards. Normally, I was using the player comparison tool, and that was doing the trick, but why aren't my filters loading? That's how you do it. You got to filter out everybody else and then start typing in players that you want to compare, and that'll do it. And you can kind of not only get a comparison, but you can visually see how far apart these players are, which is helpful, especially if you're looking at a section of like 5 or 6 guys in one area of the draft where you want to look them up. Make the little eyeball again. So here you come here, and then you deselect all, and then we'll go Matthew Tkachuk. Let it load. And then we'll bring in Pastrnak. And I'm going to guess that Pastra's higher. Yeah. So Pastrnak 94, Matthew Tkachuk 89. So then once you have this, you can kind of see they're not that far apart. They're relatively close. And, when you clear this out, if we wanted to find them, it's probably not hard to find them since we know where they're going to be now. And they're both obviously first round talent. This, I believe, so that's McDavid, McKinnon. Stop loading. Every time I stream, this thing acts up. When I don't stream, it works perfectly fine. Anyways, next question. Ignored your joke. I'm just like so out of the loop right now. It says message retracted, so I can't even go back and look at it. But thanks for joining. I hope, well, your team is probably better than mine in the Creators League, so that's Fired Up Fantasy in the chat, I believe. Don't take Suzuki, in my opinion, says Habination. And that's probably right. I'm trying to, like, I've done a couple of team grades here. I want to take a look at some questions if there are any, just because they'll be a little bit quicker to go through. If you can't get the obvious top 5 guys, is it really smart to go for anything other than the best right wing and D right away? It is, because if you have a player who is, let's say the best right winger is a 1.1 point per game guy, but the best center is a 1.4 point per game guy. That's a huge gap. And the difference between the two, like the difference between a 1.1 point per game right winger and the rest of the right wingers who are probably around a point per game is not as great as the difference between a 1.4 point per game center and the rest of the centers who are around a point per game. So that's why I went Hughes in the Creators League draft, because I think he has the potential to get there and he hasn't hit it yet. And I've been waiting a couple years to draft him and I haven't gotten him. So, and he's dual eligible. So that was another reason why, but I think you have to kind of factor in what can you not replace? What, you know, obviously the positional need is huge, but you can, like, if you're picking at 7, 8, 9, whatever, and all the best right wingers are taken, you could go Makar and that could be a nice play for you. But if you're going for, you know, you could pick up your whoever the best player available is in the first round and then hope for the second round to pick up your D, your right winger, and you'll still get somebody really, really elite. They just, you know, the top round guys, like you don't really want to mess around. If you have the option to go for a right winger, definitely do that. If you're in the back end of the first round and you can get Makar, that would probably be a good strategy because you're at the tail end of the snake and you'll probably get another guy there too. So that will help you out. But yeah, I think you do have to go best player available if all the right wingers are gone. Gooley will pass Matheson. That's a risky pick. I don't see that happening at all. Gooley has been a turnover machine and liability on defense, in my opinion. He is fast. He's a great skater, and I think he's got a bright future, but I just don't see it right now. I think he's too mistake prone. But then again, their whole team has been, and that hasn't limited their ice time. Do you know a good power play quarterback I could trade for with Nurse? A good one. I know a couple of deeper league targets that you could look for that are probably on your wire that you might not need to do that. A couple of guys we haven't really talked about. Henry Thrun in San Jose. I don't know if he's going to get it, but I don't know who else would get it in San Jose. And then you can go for Drysdale, who's not signed right now. Nobody's drafting him because of that. But if he comes back, he probably will quarterback their power play. And in the meantime, Cam Fowler's available, and he's probably going to quarterback their power play. You could probably have him. And I would imagine their power play is going to be a little bit more improved. We'll pull up the D just to take a look at it and see where these guys are. But Nurse is a really good player for hits and blocks. If you're still looking for that power play quarterback, I'm imagining you don't have another one, or maybe you don't have a good enough other one. Philip Hronek is, I don't know if he's going to be the power play quarterback, but he did do some of that in Detroit, and he's relatively complete considering where he's going. So he's right around where Byram is on the weighted rating dashboard, mainly because of his, I guess, blocks and goal scoring, power play production, which are heavily favored for D in the weighted ratings. Tony DeAngelo could be a deeper one. I don't know how much I trust that. Morgan Riley, I mean, do we really think Klingberg is going to steal the show in Toronto? I think they're going to continue putting Riley out there sometimes. And if he's not quarterbacking the first one, he'll quarterback the second one. Or they're fading him like he's not going to be doing that. He's at ADP 127. He used to be around 55. So you're getting huge value on Morgan Riley if you can find him there. And he's right around where Nurse is in the weighted ratings dashboard. So, 20 picks lower, same area. That could be a nice play for you. Rasmus Anderson is another guy, a little bit lower name value. And you could probably trade Nurse for him straight up. Gostisbehere would be another one. I think they're going to share power play time with Sider, but that's looking like a really good power play. Other than that, Kalen Addison in Minnesota. I picked up Spurgeon in the Creators League, I believe, thinking that he was going to get some power play time, and he's relatively complete, but I think they like Addison there as long as Addison can stay in the lineup because he was a liability at points last year. If you had to keep, have two: Markstrom, Grubauer, Jari, Kemper. This year, I think I'd go Markstrom and Kemper because, as I've mentioned before, with Markstrom, every other year is an up year. So it's up year, down year, up year, down year. And last year was clearly a down year. Now, the question mark for him is the defense under Daryl Sutter in front of him was extremely good. Top 5 every year that he was there, both years he was there. And now he's gone. But that didn't seem to make an impact on Markstrom, who had a 903 save percentage. No, 892 save percentage. So that's pretty bad. So if you're looking at this, it doesn't look like he's a good goaltender. But if you look at the previous season, he was a 77. So he was probably right around 13th where Saros is. So it's hard to pinpoint where he's going to be just based on the data because it's up year, down year. But I would venture a guess that he's going to bounce back up into this mid-70s range and be right around here, 13 to 15 overall. And then for Kemper, same type of thing. Now, Kemper last year, this isn't going to filter, I don't believe. Kemper was missing John Carlson on that blue line for 45 games or something, and he still put up a 908 and an 876 goal saved above expected. He played a ton, 92nd percentile in games played. So he's a heavy starter. He's still putting up a good save percentage despite the lack of defense in front of him. And there was other health issues on that team. Now they're all relatively healthy. They're going to have Carlson back. And I think that this is going to be I'm a lot higher on Washington than most other people out there. They're kind of, pigeonholing them in the 5th spot in the Metro. And I think they could be a wild card team. Obviously 5th could be wild card, but I think they're going to be a lot better than people give them credit for. They're still a really good team. They still have some really good players, and they're just a little bit older, so people don't want to, they're not excited about them. What about Brent Clark? I drafted him as well, just sort of, actually I let the viewers in the live stream pick that pick because I didn't know what to do. Actually, I had a bunch of different guys queued up, and I just let them take it and roll with it, but I don't think his hub is going to reflect the type of player that he is. I think he had 24 points in 12 games in the OHL playoffs, if I'm not mistaken. And he was, by the end of the Memorial Cup, I think he was still top 5 in scoring, and he'd been out for like 3 weeks. Like they'd been eliminated. So I think it's all dependent on if he gets that power play. If he's the power play guy in LA and it's not Doughty, I think that's huge for him. Now, I like to see that he's blocking shots, 1.56 blocks. This is a very limited sample size. I don't have the games played on hand, but I'm pretty sure this was not 9 games. Not much hits to speak of. He did get some power play time and by all accounts looked pretty good. Quarterbacking that power play, didn't have enough games to get a goal, so that's going to drag down his rating. But if he's getting that power play time, I definitely think that he's worth a late round pickup because it's one of those things like Luke Hughes or Simone Nemec, but if he's getting the power play time, unlike those two, that can make the difference. And I definitely think he'd be worth a late round pick or a pick in the late 100s, early 200s round or overall range. Sebastian says, would you rather go Stamkos or Panarin in the 3rd round? That's a tough call because I just said Panarin dropped to the 5th round and that was incredible value. I would go Stamkos, and I think I covered this in one of the videos. And just looking, it was the 3D video, and we're not going to see it in such nice detail here because we can't rotate it and twist it. But Stamkos was in that like second tier, that second wave of guys, and he's dual position eligible. He's hit 60 goals before. He's not going to do that again, I wouldn't imagine, but Stamkos is 28th on my ratings, and Panarin is 43rd. So the weighted ratings do favor goal scoring and power play points more. Panarin gets a ton of power play points, but the goal scoring goes to Stamkos for sure, and he's still getting power play production as well. And this doesn't have him as dual eligible, but I think he is. Or he usually is. Maybe they just stripped it from him this year. Did I spell his name wrong? What the hell? Why is Stevens? Oh, he's not a right wing. Yeah, so I guess he's not. Oh, he's center left wing dual eligible. So yeah, he's more valuable than Panarin. I do like Panarin, but and the faceoffs, that's 0.1 for faceoffs is not crazy. You don't really have to make that your focal point, but the fact that he's going to get them and Panarin will never get those is definitely going to help. Panarin doesn't hit anything at all, so Stamkos, I mean, I just for fun want to see how much Panarin hits, because it can't be more than like 0.2 hits per game or something. He just, the one thing I hate as a Rangers fan about Panarin is that he's a perimeter player. He never gets to the inside. He has the skill to score goals. He's got the shot, and he just doesn't use it. And I think that's one of the things that's plaguing him in the playoffs, is that he's a perimeter guy. He doesn't get to the middle, and it's too hard to score from the outside in the playoffs because you're playing all the top teams. You get 0.32 hits per game. So I'll give him a little credit there because he was a little bit higher than I thought. But yeah, not as good as Stamkos in my opinion. Probably a better player in general at this point in his career, but not for fantasy. Let's see. I think Washington's going to be average this year. They're old. That's the narrative. And I am just by nature contrarian, and I don't like to think like everybody else. So, and if you look at their team, let's pull up their team here. They use so many different abbreviations, but you got Carlson, Ovechkin, Wilson, all extremely complete. They all hit. You have Oshie who hits, who's a bumper guy on that power play. He can score goals too. He's like a 30-goal guy when he's healthy. Dylan Strome had a nice little year last year. Rasmus Sandin had a nice little year last year. Backstrom came back last year and wasn't completely healthy. I think he's lost a step, but he didn't forget how to hold a stick and chip pucks into the net and pass to Ovechkin. So I don't know if he's going to be fantasy relevant, but he's going to be relevant for their team. Kuznetsov's the wild card. I don't know if it's hard to tell if he ever cares. If he cares, he could be a top 50 player in fantasy, but he just doesn't do a whole lot. I've given up completely on Anthony Mantha. I don't think Sheary's still there. I'm pretty sure. Now maybe he is. I forget. These are not necessarily as updated as the other two dashboards. It's hard keeping it up to date with positions and team changes throughout the summer. I do my best, but sometimes things fall through the cracks. But yeah, I do think that they're going to be better than some other people think that they're going to be. Who am I trying to trade for before the season starts? I just put out a trade offer, Tage Thompson for Rasmus Dahlin in the creators group, because I want that number one defenseman. Don't think that's going to get picked up, though. JP, I'll rate your team real quick. Pettersson, Tavares, Norris, Rantanen, Svech, DeBrincat, Fiala, Tarasenko, Yossi, Letang, Seider, Doughty, Werenski, Samsonov, Hill, and Thompson. Love it. You got the Vegas tandem in net with Samsonov. Maybe a little bit light on starts because you don't have a bona fide starter, but really solid goaltending. Really good centers. I like Norris in there. You have the right winger in Rantanen. You got Svech, who's a good complete player. DeBrincat, who's got high upside. Fiala's high upside. Tarasenko's probably a depth pick. Could be a 30-goal guy for them. If you're just thinking about him replacing DeBrincat, if he puts up 27, he replaces DeBrincat. So that could be a nice play. You probably got him deeper in the draft. So I do like that team. Josh says, do you think this team needs more hitting? Zibanejad, Barkov, Robertson, Keller, Konechny, Caulfield, Yossi, Sider, Carlson. Yossi, Sider, and Carlson should all get some hits for you, and Gudis will definitely hit for you. So will Larson and Wilson. So I don't think so. I think your top end is pretty soft in terms of hits, but every other guy on this bottom line here is hitting. So I think you're covered there. If I took Hughes over Tkachuk at 6th, am I trolling or does he have a shot to be better? He has a shot to be better. It's just you're taking a risk because, as I mentioned in the strategy video, Hughes hasn't done it before. He hasn't hit 1.38 points per game, whereas Tkachuk has. So just maybe he did. Maybe Hughes is actually. I think he's in the high 1.2s, but it's maybe not that far off. But the question that I have with Matthew Tkachuk is the Stanley Cup hangover. But it doesn't, like last year when they traded Huberdeau for Tkachuk, I thought Huberdeau would be better. Just because it's easier for Huberdeau to pick up points because he's like Panarin. He just coasts around and sauces pucks through guys and ends up, you don't think he's doing anything and he ends up with 3 points at the end of the night. So I don't, and then Matthew Tkachuk went and, upended that narrative by having another 100-point season last year after a 100-point season in a comfortable situation in Calgary. So he's kind of bucking the narrative. And maybe he's going to buck that narrative again where he's not going to have the Stanley Cup hangover. So Hughes, 1.27 points per game, 97th percentile or better in all offensive categories, one of the best shot volume guys in the league. So you're not crazy to take Hughes. And Pete Jensen took Hughes at 5th overall in their draft. And I do think Pete Jensen knows what he's talking about. I don't think he's necessarily a god, but I do think he's intelligent about this stuff, and he made a case. It's obviously dual eligibility, and what you're seeing right now, all this points, goals, assists, shot volume, power play points, and this could still be a starter kit for Hughes. Like, now he's got even more talent to work with. He had Meyer for a couple games last year, but now he's got Meyer and Toffoli and Bratt and everybody else that he's been working with, and his brothers now potentially on that power play. So it's all lining up for Hughes. The problem that I have with it is that you're betting on upside in a place where you're supposed to be making safe picks, but it's really not that crazy to take Hughes over Tkachuk. I would still probably recommend taking Tkachuk at 6th, but it's not crazy to do that. $16-man league, so it's going to be a deep draft. What other guys would you target with your late picks? Couturier and Norris. I'll give you a sneaky one. Tyler Johnson. He kind of had a decent year last year. Obviously, the points aren't there. Nobody's points were there in Chicago, but okay shot volume. Power play production was okay. Couple hits, couple blocks, and a 65, relatively complete, all things considered. And now, again, that I don't think he's going to be playing with Bedard. But you're getting, if he's on the same power play with them for whatever reason, I mean, who else are they going to put on that power play? Another guy I would look at would be Athanasiou because, you just saw it in that overtime goal where Bedard just sauces it into an area and he blows by the defenseman. And I could see that happening a couple more times. I'm kind of not that high on Taylor Hall because I've never liked Taylor Hall. But I think some of those guys that are surrounding Bedard could potentially provide you some value. Nobody's drafting them, so they're going to be super deep. I also think Coyotes could be a nice play, and another guy I haven't really talked about is Lawson Krause. 2.52 hits per game, 0.75 blocks per game. The power play production isn't there. The shot volume isn't that crazy, but the goal scoring is relatively good. And he took a huge jump from 21 to 21, 22, and then continued progressing upward last year. So relatively complete. So if you're in a bangers league, he's definitely more valuable there. And he's one of those guys that's going to get overlooked because he's playing in Arizona. Nobody wants those guys. So another similar guy would be Zucker. He's a hits and goals guy with some shot volume. So same hits, higher goal production, more shots out of Zucker. So he could be another guy like that. That's kind of the narrative. Another guy I'll give you for a deep league play who I liked last year Kirby Doc, and 90th percentile in power play points. The shot volume is too low for my taste, but he's not even being drafted in the drafts that I've done. He's got an upward progression every year except for this one where he kind of stayed the same or basically went a little bit backwards, and then a huge jump between 21-22 and 22-23. And again, they were not healthy last year. They're getting healthier this year. I don't like to read into preseason, but he's looked good in preseason. He looks healthy, looks like he's making plays and big and strong down low. He, I think, is going to be on that first power play unit. So I think the points are going to jump up maybe to the 0.8 range. The goals will probably stay in this range, maybe jump up a little bit. The power play should stay the same. I hope that he gets the message and shoots a little bit more, but I like Doc a little bit more than most people, I guess. Not crazy about him, but nice deep league play for you. I got Evander Kane, and I'm not sure about his value because we only count goals, assists, plus, minus, and power play points. Yeah. Kane is good for everything but those things. Actually, he's good for goals, but Kane is the biggest wild card because I don't think he's played more than 45 games in either of the last 2 seasons. Obviously, last year was a freak thing, but he gets a ton of hits, he gets a ton of shots, and gets a ton of goals. And everything else he's not great in. So you didn't list shots, you didn't list hits, and he scores goals. So he's good for goals, and everything else, he doesn't get any power play time, and that's going to really hurt his value in your format. So I think you could trade him. I'd probably try to find someone who doesn't know your league format and dump him there. Just joined, but how come you went with Thompson with your second pick over Pettersson? I got this question today, and I will lay it out for you in detail. So, kind of panicked with that pick. If I had it to do over again, I would have picked Dahlin, which is why I made that trade offer right after the draft. What I'm looking at is 99th percentile in goals, which were rated 6 points. 99th percentile in shots, which is 0.9 points in that league format. And then 98th percentile in power play points, which was an extra 2 points. So those 3 categories are a little bit heavier weighted in that creator league format, and he's almost unbeatable in those categories, and clearly he's an upper echelon player. Now Pettersson is more complete, and he's not far off, and he's actually got a better point per game, I believe. No, I don't want Marcus. So 1.28 points per game, a little bit higher there, but the goals are slightly lower. The shots are slightly lower, and the power play points are a decent amount lower. So when you're talking about 2 extremely great players that you're picking in the tail end of the first, early second round, it's going to be, you're looking for a reason to pick one guy over another, and the difference might be, minute. And that's what it was in this case. I like Pettersson. It's a contract year for Pettersson. And again, if I had it to do over, I would have got the defenseman because I was targeting Makar and he got sniped. So, but yeah, that's why I did that. Who wins this trade? Vasilevsky and Matheson for Jenner and Vanacek. I'd say short-term Jenner and Vanacek, long-term Vasilevsky and Matheson. So, yeah, I'm in a fantasy football league right now, and I'm 1-3 because of Joe Burrow and Joe Mixon. So, in that case, where I'm struggling early on in the season, if I had Vasilevsky and Matheson, I would trade them and bring in Jenner and Vanacek to, right my season in the right direction. But right off the bat with, starting the season, it's hard to tell. I definitely think whoever gets Vasilevsky in this deal is going to win it, but it's going to take time for them to win it. And it might not, if you can kind of just tread water until he comes back, and then he comes back, you're going to be fine. But I'll rate I'll rate a couple more teams, take a couple more questions, and then that's going to do it. I'll give it 6 more minutes. That's my son's favorite allotment of time. He always says 6 more minutes. So we got Matthews, Crosby, Zaka, Meyer, Forsberg, Kraus, Reinhart, Wilson, Svech, Trocheck, Buchnevich, Yossi, Sergachev, Heiskanen, Byram, Spurgeon, Jari, Skinner, Hill. Tons of hits, tons of goals. Not crazy about Zaka, but everything else there is fine. Not fine. Everything else there is really good. Matthews, Crosby, Meyer, Forsberg, Wilson for hits, Krause for hits, Reinhart, dual eligible center right wing, Svech for hits and completeness, Trocheck for blocks, shots, hits, a little bit of everything. Buchnevich does a little bit of everything. If you have shorthanded points, he'll probably get you a couple of those. The D looks strong. Heiskanen and Yossi are studs. Sergachev in your 3 spot is nice, and then Byram and Spurgeon. And the goaltending is really strong. So another A. I'm not mean. I'm not going to give you guys Fs unless you show me a team where you picked Shesterkin, Sorokin, and Ottinger with your first 3 picks or something. That would probably get you an F. Actually, probably get you a C because your goaltending is going to be strong, but everything else is going to suck. I got an offer Sergachev and Cousins for Pietrangelo and Kane. Let's do this example. Crap. We'll do the weighted rating dashboard, and we'll just do that process that I described before and see what it looks like. And again, if you're a Patreon member, you can go and do all of this yourself. And I'm just showing you how I'm using these things, because sometimes I show you the tools and you don't, I figured this out the other day when I was trying to compare players. So Sergachev we'll put back in. Cousins is next. And then it was for Pietrangelo and Evander Kane, but no hits and shots on goal. So that's going to change things for Evander Kane. So we'll have to kind of like manually edit that out of his rating. So Sergachev's obviously the best player here. That's interesting because I think Kane is less valuable with hits. So he might be further this way. But you're still, it's like 2 middling players for a great player and a not so great player. And it kind of comes out even. Yeah, I would pull Kane down into this range maybe without hits and shots. And that might sway it in the favor of Sergachev and Cousins. But it's pretty close. I'm not sure of the value of Doughty this year. Who would you target to trade for him? I would wait until you see who gets the power play time. Although if you're sure that Brandt Clark is going to take it and you want to get out from under Doughty before he loses his value, then that would be interesting as well. Probably would want to do that. But I don't know how you'd figure that out before they start playing the games. Preseason's nice, but it's hard to get any good information on that. There were guys who lit it up in preseason last year and then went on a milk carton as soon as the season started. I'm trying to find him, and he's 16th, so he's really not bad. This should single him out. Yeah, he's... So these axes reset, so it's not the full axis that you saw before, but really good 3-year unweighted average, so relatively complete, and he's been doing it for a long time, just maybe slowing down a little bit. Let's look at his hub real quick, because I still think he is a good defenseman, and I would like having him as a D2, D3, probably a D3 in a perfect scenario. He's a little bit, underwhelming as a D2, but Doughty. So the blocks are there, 1.28. The hits are there, 1.42. Power play production, he's still really good there. Shot volume is low. Assists are fine. Goals are low. And overall points are low. So you're still getting 3 good categories here. Assists, power play, and blocks. And that seems to be what you get in the middle of the draft. So as I've said before, at the top end of the draft, you get elite players who are great in like 5 categories. Then as you go down into the middle of the draft, you get guys who are really complete but have low ceilings, or guys who are great in 3 categories but maybe not great in other categories. So it kind of depends on what you're looking for out of your draft. Since you already have him, who would I target for a trade? I mean, if it were me, I'd want a guy who's definitely a power play quarterback. If you already have a couple of those guys, Jeff Petrie or somebody like that who's going to be a hits and blocks, Adam Larson, somebody like that who's going to fill a need for you, if you have that in your point weighting or your category league, that would be something to look at. Why is it not loading my filters? VTech was really bad in the playoffs. I don't trust him. Yeah, and he was not great down the stretch. So he had a horrible month of, I think, January, February. March was okay, and then April he was really good, and then he fell off again in the playoffs. So I think the workload got to him, and I think they're going to use a complete split this year, unless Schmid takes it over. So how do I feel about Dursey? I don't know. I thought he was a pretty good power play quarterback in LA. I don't think he's that complete. I think he's power play and assist heavy just off the top of my head. The question is, I think he's going to quarterback the power play in Arizona, but they did have Valimaki there, and they had J.J. Moser there earlier in the year. Obviously, they had Gostisbehere before they traded him, but I think if he's the power play guy, I don't know if it's the best power play, but the blocks I like. 1.9, almost 2 blocks per game, almost a hit per game. The power play is good, not great. Shot volume's too low, and the goal production's too low, and the point ceiling is relatively low. So he'd be a D4, D5. I think he'd be better than some guys as a D4, at least for the blocks, points, or power play points and assists. Similar to Doughty, if we just saw the same thing, only he's got better blocks coverage, lower power play points, and I think lower assists. So probably a strong D5 and okay D4. I got stuck with Dan Vladar. That was an F team. Yeah, probably. Probably. Didn't add goalies to my team. Thompson, Copley, no minimum games. I've skipped over a bunch of teams. I wanted to do a half hour. We're already at an hour, so I'm going to have to cut it off here. If you guys are desperate, I can do another one of these maybe Thursday. We'll have to wait and see. And if I'm doing one of these live stream Q&As, I'll let you know some point during the day on Instagram and as a community post on YouTube, so you can kind of plan a little bit, so I'm not just doing it randomly. So hopefully you guys got something out of this, and hopefully I answered enough of your questions that you're not, oh, why didn't he answer mine? It is really tough to get through all of these. It's yeah, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to join me in the live stream and mention things in the chat, bring up some discussion topics. Just rechecking the chat. Yeah, we're going to cut it off there. So thank you guys so much.